Welcome everyone to the Game Dev Discussion Podcast. This is episode 2 of the Insert Topic. A bit of housekeeping. I read some of the comments from the previous episode, and there's a few things we probably overlooked a little bit. So from now on, all of these we're going to be doing webcam, so you can see who's talking. And something to help with those listening on Spotify or SoundCloud or iTunes. We can introduce ourselves rather than me introduce them. So I'll go first. My name's Alex Beddoes. I work as our station's learning manager for learning content on the platform. And I also sort of help manage the platform from an artist point of view. I also work as a senior environment artist at Counterplay Games, working on Next Godfall.
All right, my name is Duart. I'm a weapons and props artist in the games industry. I currently work as a senior artist at Decagon, and I might have a little bit of a cappuccino addiction.
I'm Hannah. I currently work as a senior prop artist at Ubisoft Reflections, and in the past I also worked as a senior artist at Decagon and art lead at indie studio CodeSync.
My name is Michael. I'm a freelance environment artist in the games industry, former lead environment artist at Decagon Studios.
Sweet. So, in case you haven't noticed, there's a bit of a correlating theme. We all worked at Decagon, that's where we all met. We also worked all as freelancers at one point or another. The theme of this insert topic is going to be freelance as a general topic, as a discussion point. And I suppose the place will start, and I'm curious to see, I think I'm going to point this towards Hannah first, just because you're the most recent person. But you've done both studio and freelance. I suppose, what's the initial sort of pros and cons you see with them? What the differences like that really struck out to you?
So I guess because obviously in January I had a decision to make whether to go full time at Decagon or to go to Ubisoft. And there was a lot of umming and ahhing about it because there was, as you say, pros and cons to both. For me, I think I like being around people. I like the daily routine. I like having my taxes dealt for me. Like I can just do my job and get paid, and that's it takes less mental energy when it's just done for me. But I think as well, like if I'd have gone freelance full time, you just never would see me. I think I'd be one of those people that was waking up at 8 p.m. and working through the night.
That was me at one point.
Yeah. So
all too familiar.
I think I'm built for the studio life a little bit.
I don't know how you guys do it. You're all night owls. I have to be in bed by like 11 and I'm up at like 6 a.m. Whereas you guys are working till like 6 a.m. and sleeping and for the afternoon. I mean, Mike sometimes when we're working at Decagon, I'd get on and I'd start working, and then he'd come on at like 1 p.m. be like, morning. I'm like, morning? What do you mean?
I have my dinner by then.
I think help me. All right.
But the worst is like always not the worst, but when you work with like international clients or somebody that's like 7 hours in front of you something, so then they ask you and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning and like, oh man, I'm sleeping, bro.
Yeah.
Or when you're trying to get to them, like, oh no, you only get to them at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon because then they only wake up and like, okay. So
Do you
find it was difficult to turn off, like if you had people from all different time zones messaging you?
1,000%, yeah. That's one of the biggest problems I had. You don't have that turn off at the end of the day, like 9 to 5. It's something I've been working on. I'm actually much better at it now. So I have been on in the mornings with Alex and chatting shit and working through the day. But when you're working with clients that are like the time zone ahead, sometimes you have to adjust to make meetings. It's 5 o'clock for them, it'd be 11 o'clock for you, and you have to. So it can get pretty difficult. So.
Curious question on that though. Like, you're all experienced freelancers. Is it a kind of necessity? Like, is it a case of, no, that's the nature of the beast? You're a freelancer, you answer your clients when they message. Or are you, from experience, is it like, can you just sit back and be like, look, you know my time zone when you hired me. Like, I'm not answering messages at 11 o'clock in the evening or like 4 o'clock in the morning. How have you guys managed that?
I think that's a balancing act in itself, right? Because when you first start off, you need to make sure that you're keeping clients busy, and then the more contracts you work, the more you get used to, okay, I need to manage my time better. So if they did message me at 10 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning, that's a problem for the next day. That's for you in the morning when you wake up.
Yeah.
That only comes with experience, I'd say.
I think
I
it's
think
like a
it's
little bit of both as well. Like you obviously you don't want to like answer a client at like 4 o'clock in the morning, but you know in what time zone they fall, so you kind of adjust your day according. So if your day maybe would have started at like 8 o'clock, you maybe start at 2, and then you work that 8 hours, and then you just adjust from there. But I don't think anybody expects you to work at 4 o'clock in the morning at all. I think a client, all you can do is you kind of like the first day you just shift on one day, if you can put it that way. Like you just you work with that, and the client has to respect that as well. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I think it's important to establish that quickly, because if you, like I said, when I was new, I did that. I was up at 4 a.m. for meetings, but if you do that, you also tell clients that that's acceptable, and that you're willing to do that, so they start to become to expect that, which also isn't good for either of you, because you're going to end up having a bad sleep cycle and bending over backwards, and then they're going to expect more.
Yeah.
if you have really like irregular days like that, how do you guys like manage to find time to do like personal work? Because with working in a studio, it's like that. Getting on the train home was like my cutoff. Like it was time to decompress, so that there was that clear transition. But I could imagine if it was just one like long continuous blur, it would be a lot more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. Like I guess that's one of the challenges getting into freelance as well. Is no like you have to start setting time zones for yourself when you're gonna stop working or not, because otherwise you'll just keep working the whole time. I mean, when you're at home, I have a designated space at home where like if I get in there, that it's only work and it's the only thing I do here in this room. Like I don't do anything else in this room. I don't bring friends here. I don't sleep here. Nothing. Like this is just where I work. And the thing is, in the beginning, it wasn't like that. So you're continuously at work. So when you get to your computer, you're not doing personal work. You're checking up on clients, and then you're doing client work. So you have to take that time. So for me, it was just like I designate like basically 8 to 10 hours a day that I work. If it's crunch time, obviously you'll work in between, but otherwise, at one point, I'll just cut off from this. That's it. Like whether I want to do personal work or something else.
But with that though, this is what I struggled with early on when I first started at Deco, and even now, like working with ArtStation and Counterplay, it's like anytime I'm more with freelance with them two, they're like their salary, so any extra work does not earn me more money. But when I was freelancing, it was like any work I spent on personal work is like, okay, I'm doing this, or I could be doing billable hours. So any personal work, in my head, and it took me a long time to get over this, any work I did which was personal, I'm like, I'm losing money right now. I spent 4 hours on a personal material, that's X amount of money I could have made. And that's something that it took me a while. So like, did you guys go through that as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think actually being in my new job now, helped me get over that, because I've rediscovered the joy of just learning and not having to monetize my time, which is it pays dividends in the long run, because if you're doing everything paid all the time, you're trying to get something out quickly. You may be cutting corners. You're probably doing stuff you already know how to do, and you're just doing it quickly. And you can pigeonhole yourself a little bit that way, I think. As you are still learning, but yeah, you run the risk of falling behind if all you're doing is like pumping out the same kind of assets you always make.
I think, speaking from experience, treating time where you're not working as time you're not getting paid is kind of a slippery slope, and will lead you to probably overworking. And one of the best ways I got around that was when I switched from treating my work like an hourly to treating it as a daily, because in that sense, you know that you have that's the amount of hours you need to do that day, and that way you can have a schedule, so 9 to 5, and then that's essentially just like a work day. You get your cut on and cut off point.
Look, it's
So that's
slippery.
helped me a lot.
It's definitely slippery, because it's not clear cut as, okay, I'm going to work 9 to 5. Let's say your work is dependent on a lead, and a lead is in a different country. You kind of have to wait for that lead. So that 3 or 4 hours that you have downtime, use that to, like, that's what I would use to go to the gym, or because I mean, working from home, you're flexible, so I don't have to go to the gym at a set time or meet this client at a set time. Like use that 4 hours, whether it's for personal work or whatever, and then you just work in your 8 hours. So basically, I treat it as like from 6 o'clock in the morning to like 10 o'clock at night. That's my working time, and obviously, it will be a little bit pushed if there's like crunch going on or whatever. But in those times, I want to be able to have a day. So basically, because after 10 o'clock, I want to knock off in a way. Like I kind of want
Yeah.
to be like done with my day. Yeah, no gym, nothing else. Like not even personal work, unless I really want to work on something. But it's kind of where you knock off. And I think the other thing as well, like thinking of, because I've been there as well. Like every time you get into a personal project, you're like, okay, this is 12 hours that I'm doing this. It's, I'm playing around. You're not making that money. But once you're once you're thinking of it like that, you're actually thinking of making money instead of making art. And in the long run, your art actually suffers, because then you're basically just chasing money. You're not chasing making good art. And that can really lead to like a diminished portfolio. Like 2 years you're not doing any portfolio work, and then kids are going past you, and you can't catch up, and you can't get work after that. And yeah, it's just not a good idea.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons I've like just stopped taking on extra stuff, really. Is because I just wanted to focus on like doing more props. And I am gonna go and learn substance designer, because I need to for my team. So I have to do that. And I've had offers for to do more tutorials, and the money's good, but it's so tempting to take it. But then you have to think about yourself, and there's going to be a fresh new batch of graduates coming out in like 2 months. So
that's something I'm quite lucky. I've got good friends around me. Like I spoke to both Ben and Enrico about this. There's opportunities come up, and I find it really hard to say no to any opportunity. Like, because to me it's like, oh, I get the chance to work on that project. That's so cool. Like, I'm gonna do it.
The fear of missing out, right?
Yeah, and it's like
exposure as well.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, I'm juggling ArtStation and Counterplay plus podcast plus having a wife and 2 dogs and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, this opportunity comes, I'll do it. And it takes like Ben to go, or like Enrico to be like, maybe you shouldn't take that. Maybe you can't do it. And then someone says you can't do it, and instantly I'm like, no, I can do it. I'll show you. And
it's scary if you have that problem, because you've been one of the voices of reason when I'm doing that. So
say what I say, not what I do, Mike. Come on.
Okay, all right.
No, it's just like, you just see an opportunity. Like, you hear the name, the project that they say, and you're like, oh, that's gonna be so cool to work on. And you're not aware of your own time. And then the point they made was, it's like, look, in a year you do good work for these 2 companies right now. Like, in a year they'll pay dividends. Like, not doing half-hearted attempts on all 4 of these things.
Yeah.
But that's been the biggest thing for me, like, since entering all this sort of freelance contractor stuff, is that having to say no to projects. And like, it's easy when they're small Mickey Mouse projects, like, oh, I just want a logo, or I just want an asset or an material. It's easy to say no. It's when the big game company or like a big game project, and you're like, oh, I've always wanted to work on that. I really want to work on that. And it's like, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe it's the wrong time. That's where I really struggle right now.
You have to remind yourself that like there'll always be another opportunity there.
Yeah.
Like, there'll be another company in like a year and 5 years, whatever, that's asking you about the next big thing. So
actually, since we're talking about companies, it's an interesting thing. So I've speaking to a few friends during this whole like everyone's working from home right now, working remotely, and now it's become very clear that remote work is an option. A couple of friends I've spoken to have said, oh, we know people who are not going back into their studio, they're going to stay as remote workers. Now, as a remote worker, you kind of get some of the perks of freelance, but also not, because obviously when you're freelance, you can take on as much work as you want. You've got tax benefits, all these kind of things. Do we think freelancers are going to go down in numbers just because, say for example, just to like pull a number out my ass, like 100,000 freelancers? Okay, now remote work's available. Actually, there's only 30,000 freelancers, because 70,000 of them have gone to be remote workers or contractors at studios, because it's become such an option. Does that? I mean, have you guys thought about it at all, like how that's going to affect freelancers? Because my thoughts are maybe rates will go up, or like amount of work goes up, because so many more people get tied up in studios. Because you know what it's like, once you sign with a studio, even if you're remote, there are like non-compete clauses and all that kind of stuff. So suddenly the pool of freelancers available to the world shrinks, because a lot of them take on all these opportunities which weren't originally there. Have you guys had any thoughts on that?
I guess it depends if they took full time or not.
True.
We might just see more contractors that do like 3 to 6 month stints.
So I'm not sure about the freelance. People will start getting paid more.
Mhm.
I think freelance. The reason you get paid more is because your price is offset by the fact you have to do your own taxes, manage your own business, pay for your own hardware and software.
Mhm.
So-
Electricity bills as well. Everyone always forgets about the cost of running the
Yeah.
hardware.
Yeah, well, so with all that, when you work at a studio, you go into the studio and that's provided for you. So that's the pay offset you get because that's all provided and inclusive. So
Yeah.
that's the main difference between them. So I don't think people will earn much more, but I think that they will have that, especially with the technology we have now. It's kind of a no-brainer to allow people to work from home permanently after
Mhm.
everything is like blown over.
There's been quite a
But-
polarized debate on Twitter though. Like I've seen some people really for everyone having the option to work from home indefinitely, but then I've seen some very strong voices saying like, no, like we cannot get into this mindset. Like you can't make AAA games like this, etc., etc. So yeah, it seems to be very much one or the other.
I've never not seen a polarizing debate on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can take the most reasonable conversation ever, and you can polarize it. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
But
I do. No, sorry, Alex.
Go on.
I do feel that not a lot of people will be. They're not going to be as receiving to the remote role than other. Like in the beginning, it sounds like, yeah, great, working from home. But I've spoken to a few people here, and they're not working in our industry. But I guess it can be the same in our industry as well. Like especially people that have kids. Like they feel like, oh, when they're home, they have so much more they have to do because now you have to look after the kids. You have to, like, your job is now divided in two. And then obviously collaboration is a little bit different as well because it's easy when you're in a studio or in a building to walk up to somebody
Yeah.
and you can ask something or you can get quick advice. Now you have to call up somebody, email somebody, schedule meetings has to be scheduled, and you're wasting so much time. Like just to get the call up, is my mic working?
Yeah.
We all know that cliche that was working in the beginning, that kind of thing. And you're just wasting so much time. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 minutes might not feel like a lot, but if you do that couple of times a day, you're wasting an hour, 2 hours that could have worked. So I think there will definitely be more people getting into freelance. I don't think it's going to change much in
Mhm.
terms of freelancing or freelancing jobs being taken, because there's another thing as well. Some people want to be in a studio because they can work with people. Like freelance it's extremely lonely. Like you
Yeah.
work from home, there's nobody around you, there's no creative input, you're kind of your own person kind of thing. In a studio there's always people collaborating. It's a different vibe. So yeah, I don't think it's going to change much. It will change a little, but the only thing that I think this did was maybe push the industry a little bit forward in what would have happened anyway in 3 or 4
Yeah.
years time.
Yeah, there was such a huge resistance from like most studios that I think people seem to think that if you worked from home you'd be slacking off, and there'd be absolutely no way of like checking on you without really draconian measures. But I think this has maybe proved that people can be trusted. And I mean, obviously this is all assuming as well, going back to your point about like the kids as well, this is assuming you have a dedicated office. Like you can see the four of us all have dedicated spaces for our PCs, but I know people who are working on desks made out of cardboard boxes, because obviously everyone started buying desks and then there weren't any, and they didn't have a home office to be able to work from home. So I imagine in those situations it would suck.
But I mean, with that though, I mean, saying so this go back to Twitter, I guess is any argument that you polarize, you automatically lose all the sensible context that sits in the middle. For example, yeah, I don't think you could. I think it's difficult to make a AAA game completely 100% remote. It's possible, but there are challenges which are unique to it. But to say, oh no, you can't work remotely because it's impossible, you have to have everyone in house, or to say no, all AAA games should be made remotely, like, because that's how it gets polarized sometimes. It's like, oh, maybe we do need our key staff on site, our directors, our C boards, but does all our material, like say just for argument's sake, material artists, people who work independently anyway, it's like, do they all need to be on site? Probably not. Like, and I've had this conversation with I think all you guys when we were at Decagon. This maybe might be why it's leading to. We've seen this with outsourcing. Outsourcing is becoming so crucial to AAA, where it's like, okay, our AAA studios are potentially shrinking a little bit because the actual on-site people are doing, like, say, the implementation of all the stuff, whereas outsource are doing much of the grunt work. They're making the big chunks of assets. They're doing the majority of the like heavy lifting. So we're kind of already seeing this behavior anyway with outsourced studios. It might just be accelerated a little bit.
I
Yeah.
guess, yeah.
That's a
I
good
would still
question. I
say
never think of that.
outsourcing studios are a little bit different. Like, yeah, they're not doing the core work, as you say.
Yeah.
They're probably not doing the hero assets, the stuff that's important to
And there's also
narrative.
on-site outsourcing studios as well. I
What do you mean?
think. Well, there's also outsourcing studios where they outsource their art, but they don't actually make games themselves, and they have people on site. So
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
Elite 3D.
We
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we actually had that when I worked VFX. Like we would work on this client's project or whatever, and then they would send people to your office and they would work with you, but they're just contractors, like
Really?
outsourcing studio, but they would work with you. Yeah, happened a lot. Like it was really weird to me, but we
Quite
would
common
often.
in web dev as well. Those
That sounds
all
expensive.
programmers.
Oh yeah, I mean,
imagine
they
so.
like usually we'd work with people. Like I worked in Joburg, so we would fly people in from Cape Town, and then yeah, that's like okay, that would be like $300 a ticket, one
Plus
shot, all the time.
accommodation, plus catching them up.
So
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing that Dua just mentioned. You're in Joburg. You're in South Africa at the moment. You're Pretoria, right?
Yep.
Didn't want to just out your location, but people that work around the world actually have much more access to being able to work on really cool projects and grow as an artist through freelance and outsourcing when you're working remote. So allowing that kind of, I imagine it's probably not best. It's probably a double-edged sword to let people that are new to the industry outsource if you're a big AAA studio, because one, they've not proven themselves yet, and two, like there's no way you can really check on them and keep things going, and it's harder to grow as an artist, I imagine. I've never worked on site if you're not surrounded by a lot of mids and seniors around you as well.
Mm.
So there's a lot
Yeah,
of factors to take into account, but the fact that you can have a lot of people all around the world work on these really cool projects together, that's probably one of the best things about the technology we have at the moment and freelancing.
Yeah, I think that's the pros of freelancing is that it gives a lot of people work opportunity, especially if you take South African artists, for instance. Yeah, our pool is not nearly as big as, let's say, the UK or the US. But if you're determined to do what you want, then yeah, you can still make a name for yourself and work in the industry. But again, talking from experience as well, is like I feel that getting into a studio job is better. Get into a studio job first and then go freelance for multiple reasons. And one big reason for that is you learn a lot when you're in the studio, like
I-
because you're not pulling from one guy here or one, you're pulling from multiple people every day. You can see what people are working on, you can see what they're discussing, and normally in a studio environment you have a lot of seniors as well, like mature people that have worked in the industry for long, so you get a good amount of good knowledge out of it. So yeah.
I
How
think
dare
you
you
get exposure
assume?
to
Sorry, how dare you assume senior artists are mature? That is bullshit. We are not mature. We're not going to mature. Just throwing it out there. Sorry.
yeah, I
say
definitely
that.
do not act my age. Like, gonna be 30 in a few years
apologize
and do not act
for
it.
the 10-year-old out there.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
I'm
on.
sorry, Hannah.
I had a point if you want to try and remember. I agree with Duard. I 100% every time someone's looking to get into the games industry, I would always recommend going for a studio first. I kind of did it backwards because if you're going to freelance, I'd say you need that discipline that you can get from that like 9 to 5, working that job, going in and out of studio. The people that
You
you're
had
surrounded
worked
by.
somewhere before, right? Though, so you hadn't just
Yeah,
like
I'd worked in
suddenly
multiple
come at
offices. And,
so you had some professional practice that you'd learned from.
totally.
What I would
Yeah.
say though, just with that, and it's sort of so I disagree, but I agree. So the thing is, I mentioned it, freelance opens up opportunities. For example, there's people in countries like Brazil who, there's not a ton of game studios in Brazil, and let's face it, you have to earn your stripes to get into to be relocated and be an artist at a studio. Outside of unless you have like a killer portfolio, which a lot of people do, but I feel like the freelance opens opportunities for people to at least get a ship title on their CV. Like, okay, I worked for an outsourced studio, I did a bit of freelance, on this game. Okay, I have a ship title on my CV. Now when I apply to a studio, and maybe you do like a freelance gig or a couple of freelance gigs to get yourself a bit of credibility behind your name. So that when you apply to a studio, it's like, look, I have worked in production, I have a ship title. Now it's a little bit easier for me to move from the other side of the world to you guys. And you guys actually want to buy into me. And because that's when you fly someone out from another country, the studio's invested in you as a person. So the way I see it is, I agree. I think your bulk of your learning should be, and early on in your career, should be in the studio. However, I feel like freelance opens the door for you to make it easier to get into a studio. You know, working with, like, say, the likes of Decagon, Next Gen, any of these guys.
Oh yeah,
it's a little
to get experience.
Exactly.
The trap of I need experience to get into a studio to get experience. So it's
Yeah.
I guess it's
that
also
ultimate-
worth commenting on the purchasing power of if you freelance. So, like obviously if you get paid in US dollars, but if you live somewhere the living costs are like astronomically lower. So I was reading a thread on Twitter about and it'll just be a case of Chinese whispers because I don't know any of these people, but apparently there was like this really famous sculptor from Thailand that does really like nice zebra sculpts. And he went and worked in the US for a few years and then moved back to Thailand, but continued to charge his US salary. And obviously the dollar in Thailand has much higher purchasing power than it would in like San Fran. So I think it opens up a lot of doors there as well. Like, you're not having to be shackled to a really expensive San Francisco or London apartment that, vampires your salary.
that is a bit of a double-edged sword there, because I've worked for companies in many countries and working in different currencies because they rise and fall in comparison to whatever your currency is, wherever you're living. That can exacerbate the issue of the inconsistency of earning when it comes to freelance.
Have you ever had, I don't know if this is like an inappropriate question, but have you ever had like a serious problem with like a currency diving and affecting your paycheck?
No, I've mostly worked for companies. It's only been little bits, but I imagine someone like Duan, somewhere like South Africa, that's a little less financially stable, could go up and down significantly, right?
That's the thing. Like that's what we're experiencing right now, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up with freelancing, because obviously when you work in a certain country, you get paid in that amount, and then hopefully you make more than whatever the living cost is. I really hope that is the case for whoever is doing that. But there's definitely that double-edged sword when you're freelancing. It can make you a lot of money in terms of the fact that you're earning from a better currency than what you have. But the thing is, as soon as your economy gets stronger, then your paycheck goes down, and it's not like the economy gets stronger and then all the living costs get like adjusted that fast. It doesn't happen. Like with what we have in the corona, like we were 18 or at a point 19 to the dollar. So you would be earning really well, and now we're at 16.37, I think, something like that. So it means like for every dollar that you earn, you make 3 rand less, and the rand is not. It's worth more in terms of what is it, international currency, but here it kind of has the same buying power. So basically, what you would have gotten out of let's say a $3,500 paycheck. Next month that would be like almost 9 grand less, in terms of and that can make a big difference as well.
Mhm.
So so it is I'm not saying like economies go that up and down, but obviously with the whole situation with corona,
Well, this year has proved that anything can happen. Like, who knows
Please,
what's going to happen
Don't,
next?
no. Okay, I'm moving the topic on. Fuck this shit. I'm not having 2020 do another thing to me. But there's actually, okay, I want to talk about one thing. This is a topical thing, and you mentioned it with Twitter. There's that hashtag going around. What's it?
Game dev paid me.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on this? Because I had a conversation with a colleague today. It was a good conversation. Because my point was, I don't actually kind of like it that much personally, just because what you get paid, and it's not to do with like secrecy or anything like that. It's just that for me, social media and Twitter especially is not the platform to be having a conversation, because there's so much context involved in what you get paid. Outside of your job title, you have environment artist A and environment artist B. Environment artist A has like 6 ship titles. They've got 4 years more experience. Maybe it has some sideways skills, and then you got environment artist B who doesn't have that. And it's like, on Twitter when you post, hey, this environment artist gets this and that environment artist gets that, the how we do the same job. It's like, no, there's a lot more to it than that. So I just wanted to see what you guys think. And if you don't, if you don't want to comment on it, it's fine. But what's your general thoughts on this thing that's happening right now? Because there are some good sides to it. Like, there are positives to come from it. Have you guys observed it?
Personally, yeah, I don't know. Like, Twitter can obviously, things can just blow up. But that game dev spreadsheet came out in 2019, so it's not a new thing. I think it's just like it's retrending again. But when that first came out, that actually helped me negotiate a bit of a rise at my last place, because I was senior going into a lead position, and I was looking. I did use it to compare. I think having like it broken down by regions in the UK helped as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the spreadsheet in and of itself is not the worst idea, as long as it's stays anonymous. Obviously there's always the worry of data breaches that things won't. But I think the commentary on Twitter, yeah, as you say, it can skew things.
Well, people also aren't always 100% forthcoming with information as well. Hey, I got paid this, and I was a mid. No, you weren't. You were a junior. I've read through films. I'm curious. Like, there's some positives coming from it. I've seen studios who have a reputation for certain pays, and there's a bunch of information correlating that, which is good. And you're like, no, that's not good enough. You're paying at least minimum wage. Like, that doesn't happen. But I've seen also people suggest that they have a different job title to what they actually had or they were contracted to, and it's like, oh, this screw this studio, they pay me this, and then it's like, well, you didn't actually. You were an intern or you were a junior when you claimed to be a senior. Like, people aren't always forthcoming on Twitter. This is my issue, is that there's no context to anything. It's like, how many characters is there for Twitter? 150? 100? I don't know how it... Yeah,
is it 240? They put it up.
Yeah, I think it's
240. Are you meant to get explain your whole like context around your salary in 240 characters across your career? Like, no, it's ridiculous. Yet people doing that leave room for interpretation and then misinformation, or and like I said, there's positives to it, but I just feel like it's a very dangerous game to be playing. When everyone starts throwing out there.
More than just numbers, like, so that with the spreadsheet, like, even though that did help me get visibility on maybe what I thought I should be paid, actually I think a lot of it came from just good old like bolstering my portfolio, working hard in the office, but also it sounds kind of lame, but I read a lot of books about like negotiation and like how to have discussions and stuff. But it actually
the difference, right?
It does actually help, because it does all come down to how you negotiate, how you make your point about why you need this, and also to help you stop feeling guilty or that you're being big-headed or whatever. So I would say stuff like that, like education around negotiation and practicals, like professional skills, is probably more useful than a hashtag, but it doesn't mean
with that though. And okay, I get what you guys. So you guys are all, I think we're quite similar. We're able to, that's a polite way of saying this, fight our corner. We're able to defend ourselves and argue our points. When I had this concept, because like I said, my normal response is, oh, I'm not being paid what I feel like I'm worth. Well, argue your point then. Go out, defend yourself. Go tell them why you deserve more, and if you don't like it, leave. And the counterpoint to it, I'm like, I kind of see some validity in it, is that, oh, I shouldn't have to. Studios shouldn't try and shortchange their staff. They should be honest and fair. And I'm like, yeah, but there is still a responsibility on yourself to, if you feel like you work hard out, you deserve more money, to be able, it's part of growing as an artist or as a person in general, to be able to argue your side of the story and argue your point to your employers. And the way the conversation finished was that I'm a different person, I come from a different point of view, and it's not a particularly fair point of view because not everyone can do that. So, I mean, just because it kind of leads on from what you were mentioning, have you thought about it from that point of view before? Or like, what do you guys think about that?
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. I'm notoriously unempathetic, so I don't know.
I don't know what you mean. You're the most empathetic person I know.
Yeah.
I mean, you get my
Someone
point.
else
Like,
has
there is a fair, like, you know, I see their point, but part of me sort of was, and in the nicest way possible, say tough tits, argue your point.
I think studios just should maybe have, and a lot do, but it would probably be good advice for smaller studios who maybe haven't bolstered up the HR department as much, but to have robust review systems in place. So having one-to-ones with whoever your line manager is, and having goals and goals that not just are given to you, but like, an idea in yourself, like how you want to improve, and just transparency around how that could contribute to salary raises. Because the worst thing that could happen is a few select people in in whatever studio or collective or whatever start getting raises, and people always talk,
Yeah.
and when people find out that there's discrepancies, that's when trust gets damaged, and resentment starts to build, and yeah, it's
It's
not a
not
good
pretty.
time.
Yeah. No, I feel like, first of all, I really like my boss paying for my Lamborghini. That's really great. And,
Not
like
taxable,
being
right?
yeah, that's the thing. Like, you don't want to pay the taxes. You just upgrade your Lamborghini every year, and you just put all the cash in there. And I just want my boss to pay for that. You know, I mean, why not?
Lamborghini
I
is
like
a phone contract.
yeah, I like working 20 hours a week and then driving a Lamborghini. Like, what's up with that? You know,
as a junior, right?
but oh yeah, of course, yeah. Actually, an intern. Like, I want to, yeah.
Okay.
But the thing is, I think the big thing is having consistency first in a studio, and I think that's where it ties in with Hannah as well. Is like setting out to your artists what is certain goals they have to achieve, or what they have to contribute to said company to get yourself moving forward. I think a big daunting thing, and I think you spoke with what's his name? You guys spoke about this, like how fast people jump from junior
Josh
to
Lynch.
senior. Yes. And it's sometimes people wouldn't know what senior actually entails. It's like it's a jump, but you don't know what it entails, and then you just make a leap to lead, and then you get obviously the paycheck, but then you're not sure about what you have to do, what you have to contribute, and then some people just drown, like they just don't know what to do, and then often they feel like, okay, this salary doesn't make sense for that role anymore. So I think, first of all, like, I think that's where I sign with Hannah, or where I agree with Hannah as well, is like having set out, like, if you can put it this way, goals to your artists. Like, hey, this is what we want you. Like, if you want to be a lead, this is what we need you to do in said studio, and what you need to do first to get there. I don't know. I think consistency first in a studio, because, like, let's say you have a senior in a set studio earning set amount, and then another senior but earns totally a different amount. Like, obviously you're first going to have that whole debate inside the studio first, like before you can have that debate with some other guy in a different studio, because again, you have to look at living costs. It's a whole different story. Is it AAA, is it indie, that kind of thing. So I think, first of all, like, sort out rates in a studio first, and then
But you can't do that, can you?
standardized.
How do you do that?
I
like,
think so.
if you have, like I said, this is kind of comes back to the issue me and Josh were talking about, that you can be a senior for 5 years. So there's context to why you paid a certain thing. So I'm a senior for 5 years. I have 5 reviews and I get 5 pay bumps. Okay, clearly I'm already, even just with that, which is a super fair argument, senior A and senior B are on 2 different salaries because of incremental pay. Fair. And then it's like, okay, what about if a senior has sideways skills? Okay, this person is really valuable to us. We have like environment artist A and B. This guy knows a load of tech art stuff, and he's able to do a bunch of tech art side of things on top of his usual responsibilities. Okay, that person is slightly more valuable to us as a company, because that's the thing as well. This sounds terrible to say, but companies look at the artists and their team in general as assets. What can this person bring to the company, and what can they do for us?
Yep.
They're going to do environment art, brilliant. They're going to go do that. Oh, this environment artist does that other stuff too. Okay, that's actually more valuable to us. Like, there's that should that even come into the equation then? Or when we're talking about salaries, should the fact that I say have extra skills on top of it, should that not come into the equation when we're talking salaries? Or is it just
also experience and time
that's what I mean.
in the studio, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's 2 people at the same time joining the studio at the same time for a lead position, I'd imagine the one that has the more skills has the more value, right?
Yeah.
All right, but do you?
Have one that's been there.
I guess
5
then
years
that comes
that
down
got
to
the
hard
raises.
skills and soft though, because then it's like, then you get the argument of like, are people skills? Are they able to be monetized? Are they and from that,
Are they
then
measurable?
more value? Yeah, are they more valuable than hard? Is it hard skills that's like the technical stuff? But yeah.
Yeah.
So then you get into that debate, like how do you start like breaking down the cost of people's skills? Like there's
And then
stats bars that
contextualize as
everyone
well.
hates.
It's like, oh yeah, I have good skill. I have people management skills. Okay, yeah, but you people managed in a mobile studio of 10 people versus the other person. I people managed EA. Like, they're the same skill, but one's context is more valuable than the other's. This, I mean, it's such a complex thing. Like,
That's the thing. Like, are you gonna break down like bounties? Like, oh, you can make coffee, so $7 more an hour, you know,
but
or something like that.
it leaves room to interpretation. Is my point. It's
Of course,
I find
yeah.
it really hard to put. Because we're all every artist is unique in their own different way. Like, it's very hard. Well, okay, maybe the junior stage it's a lot easier because you don't have juniors join you with 6 ship titles and, you know, all of these other contextual things. Like, the lower down you are, it's probably easier to make very fair boxes. You know, 2 juniors, post grad, no experience, they should really be on the same salary. Even if one knows like a little bit of tech or whatever, they're not going to do that. A junior is not going to be doing all of their junior roles and get involved in like something else. They're going to be very focused. I find as the higher up you go, it gets more difficult. Because, like I said, seniors, they wildly vary. Leads, they wildly vary.
Not just that,
Yeah,
it's relative to industries, the game industry, just like yours and Josh Lynch's talk, which is a really good episode and helped me a lot as well, on roles to aim for and what they mean. Because the industry changes so fast, it kind of makes it harder to know where you're going to go next, what your role really means, and how much you really should be worth. At the end of the day, the only real thing that you can keep track of over time is experience in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
yeah.
In that regard. So
I guess this is where brackets will come into play, though. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't think like roles won't have like a hard salary that they want to give out. It'll be like, it'll be between, I don't know, 50k and 55k.
Yeah, I
or
agree with
something.
that. Yeah.
But
I think, but sorry, do you think there's such a thing as overqualification in, because that's not like, maybe I'm wrong because I've been working freelance for too long, but do you think like being overqualified is a thing in the games industry? Because I see this a lot with my friends. Like, they would be accountants and then they would go into a job and like, no, sorry, you're overqualified. We can't get you into this job because we can't afford you or whatever it is. But I don't see that happening in the games industry at all. Like, I understand, like, not everybody has PhDs. Like, for us, experience would be kind of your qualification. But then, like, where do you cap that? Like, sorry, you can't be a senior because, yeah, you have done all of this. Like, where does that come into play then?
I don't think that happens. I think it's, like you said, normally it's because of, you mentioned the accountants, it's because we can't pay you that. With the games industry, I guess it's a case of it's whatever your rate is. Like, if I spend like, in fact, I nearly did this. I nearly went to a studio and took a substantial, I think like a 40% pay cut. I nearly did, and it was like, if I'm willing to do that, it's impossible to be overqualified. I guess, you know. Oh, you were lead at that studio. Okay, cool. Well, we only want a mid. If I'm willing to take that drop back down to mid, that's it. Like that's the overqualification doesn't matter because I go in and I do my job. I guess your soft skills come into it. Like, if you want to be a what's the word? Be very involved in the process. I want to decide pipelines. I want to do this. You could probably talk yourself out of a job, I imagine, by being overqualified. You could be like, hey, I want to do all this stuff. And they're like, we kind of just want someone to come in and just do the work. Like, we don't need more voices in the kitchen, so to speak.
I think there's also the worry of sometimes people can be a bit like, a bit concerned that people might jump ship. Like, say if you've got someone who's worked in AAA for ages and then they, want to come to a small indie company because they think they've had enough or whatever, and they're willing to take a massive pay cut. There's always that worry that they might get it wrong and then leave again in like 3-6 months, and then you have to hire again.
Good point.
Have you guys seen that? I haven't seen that personally. but I've got very limited experience. Have we seen or heard that?
I've known of
Yes, one
people
person.
coming out of AAA and saying, I just want to slow down and work on some cool projects. I've worked on the big stuff now. But I wouldn't really say you're overqualified at that point, because I think people at indie studios end up being much more versatile in my experience working with them.
Yeah.
And then people at AAA, I think it's changing now, but you would usually specialize more at AAA. So you're going to be very good, if not one of the best, at that thing that you do from AAA. But in an indie studio, if you do have those multi skills, that'll also help.
I mean, with AAA though, and I have heard this, like, oh yeah, we want you to be specialised to be the very best at what you can do. I have seen quite often, I suppose, that if you want to put your hand in, dip your toe into something else, like, say, me for example, I'm like, okay, I've been doing a lot of environment art, material art. Are you okay if I dabble a bit of the lighting? Yeah, okay. This little area, have you could do the lighting for it. Cool. I'm now, but you have to ask. That's the only thing. Like with an indie studio, it's kind of a necessity. It's like when I went to Live 5, it's like, okay, we need animations. I'm not an animator. We need animations. Oh, okay, we need VFX. I never did a VFX in my life. Learn it. We need it. Like it's a necessity. Whereas in AAA, it's a little bit more like, if we have time and you want to do it, and we think you can do it. For the most part, I've seen people are able to do that. There's one studio in mind which I know is notorious for not doing that, but it's rare and it's an outdated idea, I think, or at least a dying idea. I hope.
Yeah.
One thing we sort of, I'd be interested to see what you think. When you browse ArtStation, there's a lot of freelancers on ArtStation. There's a lot of them, and there's some legitimate outsourced studios on there. We have like Deco, Next Gen, Elite, War Dog. They're all on there. But also, I'm curious, as freelancers, this is like a business thing, I guess. I've seen a lot of freelancers just sort of call themselves outsourced studios. They just they change it. I've literally seen their name change to insert outsourced studio. Do you think that helps? Because the way I think about it is, when companies are hiring outsourced studios, they tend to be, the people making that decision are informed. They're not some HR person who doesn't know what the industry looks like. They're informed. They know when a studio is a studio when one's one dude in his bedroom. But do you think it helps? Is that a good thing when you call yourself an outsourced studio? Are you setting yourself up for failure? Are people literally memeing on you when you do that? Like,
I think it just makes, it's gonna sound horrible, but I think you run the real risk of looking really amateur, especially if you, obviously branding is a massive part of presenting the whole image of your company. And I know the kind of accounts that you're talking about, and it's the first thing that gets me is not the art, it's the logos that they make for themselves. And just like, you'll never be taken seriously. Like, at least pay for a logo design.
Or just get Duarte to do it. Duarte is like the master of graphic design, and like you did a lot of the stuff for Deco, I remember.
Yeah, did you? So I didn't realize. Did you make your own logo? Because I remember messaging you being like, "Oh, that looks sick," but I didn't realize. Did you do it yourself?
Yeah, I actually have a background in graphic design before I went into 3D. Yeah, I actually worked as a graphic designer for a couple of years before I actually even thought of getting into 3D. 3D was kind of something I wanted to broaden my my horizons with. And then once I dipped into it, then I worked in VFX for a while, and then I realized it sucked. And then I apologize for anybody who enjoys working in the VFX, but it's true. Like it's really true. It just sucks. And then I went into games. So, but yeah, no, I used to be a graphic designer first.
It is an easy way to get hung up on, isn't it? Like, it's the same as when someone doesn't have an ArtStation website. They have like a Wix and it's poorly formatted, and like I spend more time. Well, you know what I mean? Like, you spend more time critiquing someone's UI or their layout. There's been loads of times I've looked at someone's portfolio and I'm like, where's like what software did you, like, all the questions when I post on ArtStation, like, and this isn't because I work from, by the way, like, just disclaimer, but on an ArtStation post, I know when you posted it, I know what software you used. It's just the artwork and wherever it is. There's been times on a Wix website sometimes and I'm like, okay, when did you do this? Okay, there's no date. Is there any information? No. Okay, what software did you use? Okay, well now, all questions I have to get back to the person to ask. Now, I spend more time focused on that than I do on the person's artwork, even if you have killer art. And I think it's kind of the same with the logo thing. Like, you can come to an amazing website or like profile, and they're like their own studio. Then they have like a less than good logo, to put it politely, and you're like, oh, that's a bit of a shitty logo. Okay, and it's like it's already soured your taste before you even get to their artwork. And I think that's when that's what's hit me most.
Right? And that's ultimately what
Yeah.
you need in an studio is you need that level of quality control across the board.
I wouldn't call that just an outsourced studio issue, though. If you're a freelancer and you're also branding yourself with a logo, you should probably put some time into it because
Yeah.
it's the same thing essentially. Obviously, there's a lot more to hiring people and having a business, especially when it comes to tax and treating yourself as a business. But I don't think that it's too huge of a jump from one freelancer to a small group of freelancers. How would you define a small group of like 3 friends that are freelancing? That
Yeah.
start becoming an outsourcing studio?
I think the only like this is just my opinion, but I think the only good thing coming out of branding yourself as an outsourcing studio is a tax benefit. Other than that, I don't see really the benefit of it. But with that also being said, and I do concur with what Michael said, is like branding yourself as a freelancer or as a studio, your logo will always be the first impression, always. And if this is just my opinion, but if I go look at somebody's work, it's not just how they do one thing, it's how they do everything. And if your logo is sloppy, it tells me that, okay, you're not really that diligent in all assets of work. Yeah, you have a killer portfolio, but then, why didn't you put that same amount of passion or time into your logo? I don't know. That's just how I feel.
What about if you have
I think
this photo? Sorry, go on, Hannah.
I was just gonna say, I think it doesn't just apply to studios and freelancers. Like, I think it's important that even if you work, outsourcing studios and freelancers, but even if you work for a studio like I do, like, I started using my branding a lot more because I think, and I cannot remember who, I always do this every podcast I'm on. I'm like, oh, this tweet I've seen. I can't remember who it was that said it, but I think it might have been Josh Lynch was saying that no one sees what you do for work. Everyone knows you by the stuff that's online and like your personal stuff. So I think every artist should really consider branding themselves, whether they do much personal stuff or freelance stuff or not.
It is actually, you know what? It's funny you say that because I was talking to it's James Ratosa. For a while, he was known as the pill guy. Like for his material, he did a mat ball with pills, and for a long time, he was known as the pill guy. And like for a while, I was known as like people said either the podcast guy or the safe house guy. And then I know how I imagine being referred to as the coffee machine girl, and everyone knows you for that. Jay Cummings, I mean, he's probably the most common one. Like the slaughterhouse guy. Like it's almost like that one flagship piece can almost make or break you. Like once you get that piece where people are like, they don't know your name and they don't know who you are, they know the work, and you have an association with that. I feel like that's a huge like benefit. Like almost like, okay, you want to be a freelancer, have that one piece that people know you for, like that everyone remembers and they attach to you, and you'll set yourself up. Was it the till?
Yeah, as soon as I posted the till, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks later that Decagon reached out, and then after that it was like, as they say, like opportunity begets opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So and that was weird because I'd been working in the industry for like 3.5 years,
mm-hmm.
but it was just on no one's radar until that one piece.
Go on.
No, I think this just touches on a really important thing, and it seems like, because I'm like, especially looking at new artists, some people just want to get like a ton of stuff on portfolio. It's more like quantity over quality, and I know this is being echoed every time, but it just seems like it's not getting into certain people. And like, it's better to just have a really good piece on your portfolio, and there's just one piece, than what you have like 4 pieces and they're rubbish. Like just have that one standing out, because that's where it all starts for you.
I see. I slightly disagree with that. If I see a new portfolio and there's only one piece, my instant thought is to doubt, because there's not enough to go on. I'd say maybe 2 or 3 pieces, but if it's just one, I'm like, it sounds bad, but like my first thought is like, is it stolen? Because you see so much stolen art on like Sketchfab.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I think my big thing is I see one amazing piece. There's there's two main questions coming to my head when I was hiring. It was A, how much time did you spend on that? So for example, Safe House for me took way too long, and I overscoped anyway, but it's that scene was never, it was an unreasonable amount of time. B, it's if I only see one or two pieces, there's so many blank spots where I'm okay, you need to do an art test because I don't know if you could do that. You need to do an art test. Now, with my portfolio, every single piece is for example, the outward gas scene's always the one which people mention. They're oh, it's not that strong. Maybe you should take it down. I'm no, I'll leave it up there because it shows outdoor stuff. It shows text shader stuff. It's answering a question for my portfolio. Is it my strongest piece? No. But it answers a load of questions where if sort of a recruiter looks at it or an art lead, oh, we don't need to give it. Well, they obviously still offer art tests, which pisses me off. But it's oh, we need to do an art test. Why? Well, we don't know if you can do outdoor stuff. Well, there's an outdoor example there. Was that not good enough? And it's and if they say no, then fine, I'll do an art test and I'll do better. But that's the way I see it. Is your portfolio is almost like a checklist to me. Okay, I've shown these skills. I've shown these skills. I've shown these skills. I've shown these skills. That being said, don't fill your portfolio with a load of shit and then one decent piece. If you just got one decent piece and a load of shit, maybe consider getting rid of a load of shit.
Yeah.
That's something interesting that we could touch on actually. Is another benefit of freelance is you don't really do art tests, whereas for studios, it's obviously still expected in most places. But I've never heard of a freelancer being asked to do a whole scene to check if they could do the work.
I think that slightly ties into a point that I was going to bring up ask you guys do you think that portfolio is more important if you're looking for, okay, so say you already work in a studio, you can go from studio to studio without having to do much on your portfolio, right? You can go just by reputation and who you know. And for freelance, your business, you're advertising yourself. Would you guys say that portfolio could be more important or?
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for somebody to tie in here.
Yeah, I think so. If you're whatever to move around, if I was to, so if you do freelance for a while and it's okay, if you're in a studio, I'm in a studio for 2 years and I decide to move, project's not released, it's not releasing for another 2 years. All the credibility is tied into being in that studio. The fact I go into the studio in the first place, that's my credibility there. As a freelancer,
X amount of time.
Yeah.
The project is done now, even though you can't share.
But in the exact same situation, I worked for 2 years as a freelancer, and the projects I worked on aren't released for another 2 years.
Yeah.
And I apply for a studio. They're show me something. It's I can't. I was freelancing. And this actually happened. This happened to me in 2 different interviews where they're it doesn't carry the same weight. And they actually said, it does. When I said it's the exact same to me as if I was in the studio. The stuff I did with Decagon and I couldn't share. It was well, I did that stuff. It's on a AAA game, and they go, well, it's not quite the same as being in a studio, though, is it? And I'm is it? And I thought about it. Okay, maybe I see your point, but it's I think as a freelancer, you definitely set yourself up for that.
I think that's one of the reasons why I always warn people away from it, because it's deceivingly difficult. Because you have to treat it. You're a business at that point. You're not just. And that doesn't go against what I was saying earlier. Just to get to any level in the industry, you need that portfolio. So anyone starting off, I recommend, even if you're going for studio work on your portfolio. But yeah, I was just wondering if you guys saw a difference in those at all.
Also, I think everything's down on reputation, though, isn't it? Businesses have portfolios. Even businesses that have nothing to do with games have portfolios. Just they would appear different than ours. But I think it is very easy to falsify client lists. I've seen I obviously can't name names, but there's been people I've seen that have set up one-man companies, not even to do with game art, but in games, and they've used logos from things that they didn't work on. And it's very unless the hiring person is doing their due process, they're gonna have to go research and reference check and check that these client lists are correct. And if they're having to do that for every one-man team or one-man freelance, I can see why it would be easier to just gloss over those applicants.
Well, you'd also go to an outsourced studio. With an outsourced studio, it comes back to the sort of the validation. If I come to you individually, I've got to validate you. Whereas if I go to Decagon, it's like, I already know Decagon are legit, and I already know they do their thing. So it's like, okay, if you're working for them, you've already been validated in some way, so it's a non-issue. But also, it's... I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Your reputation, I feel like, only works firsthand, if that makes sense. Like, if I have a relationship with somebody and I say I'm looking for work, gonna get a job, and they're like, hey, I can validate this person. I know this guy, I worked with him, he was good. Despite what his CV says, I trust him. It's like, okay, and if that person's in a higher position or higher enough position, it's like, great, you're sorted out. What I have found, though, is if it's secondhand, so you're a artist in a studio, and you're just an artist, you're a mid or a senior, and you have a friend who is legit decent, and you're like, hey, boss, this person, he's sick. I know we're after an artist, this guy can do it. They've already kind of took a leap of faith on you and your reputation, so they're not going to then take a leap of faith on the reputation of your reputation, if that makes sense. I'm probably explaining this poorly. Like, it's secondhand, and it doesn't carry the same weight. And that's something I've run into a couple of times where it's like, hey, I recommend this person. They don't have the experience, and we're not going to take your word on merit. And it's like, okay. The reputation's only work firsthand, I find.
Yeah, I there's a lot of interesting points here. But it is shown that organic hiring is still like the most effective. So basically, it's all about the people you know. I do think that reputation plays a big role, especially in our industry. Like if you made a good name, I mean, you can basically just snap your fingers and it happens for you. But one thing that I find still more effective is the people that you know. Like if you know somebody in a certain studio, that always helps more. Like you can market yourself the more or any way you want. Like if you have somebody that recommends you, it kind of gets you in front of the queue. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will get the job, but it gives you a lot higher percentage to get the job than somebody else. So I feel that networking is still king.
Well, testament to it, my past 4 jobs have all come from networking. I'm going to use podcasts again, like the podcast, networking. It has not come from my portfolio. It has not come from me applying for jobs. The past 4 jobs, 5 actually, have come from the relationships and knowing people and all this kind of stuff. And the podcast was a big aid in that. But it's almost like, but then I feel, you know what? When I think of it like that, and I'm like, don't you guys think it's so hard? And once you're in the industry, once your foot's in that door, it's like, okay, you're automatically, as soon as you're in the first studio, your first job, you're building relationships every day. But the other people outside who are trying to get in, it's like that first barrier to entry is the hardest, isn't it? Like freelance, it doesn't matter.
Foot in the door.
It is, but we've all been through it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I had exactly this said to me when I was at uni, and you know, I was very much told, yeah, it'd be hard to get in, and once you get that first one, you're fine. But yeah, like all 4 of us have done all right. So it is hard, but it's not impossible.
No, not possible at all. It's just like Dwight said, it's give yourself that best option, isn't it? Because you have 3 artists who say they're all exactly even, they're completely even Stevens in skill and level and quality, but one of them knows one of the artists, and then when the lead asks for everyone's opinion, and that one artist goes, "Oh, actually, I know that guy. He's really good. He's a good artist," and then they come back to the drawing board. It's like, okay, we've got these 3 artists who are the exact same. How do we choose? Oh, actually, Alex recommended him. Ooh, okay, that's all we've got. That happens more often than you think. Whenever I think, Hannah, you've been involved in hiring processes, and I think you guys have probably scoured CVs as well. You nearly always end up with at least like 4 or 5 where you're like, okay, we've gone through everyone. These are our 4 or 5. How do we choose? And then you go through and you really get into granular detail, and like, it sounds awful, but sometimes it's arbitrary things of why you choose one person over the other. Oh, this person, they're closer. That's it. That's the only thing they wouldn't. In fact, we don't have to relocate them. It's less money for us. That's the only thing. It's like, hey, you think, okay, that sucks, but that's why I guess the relationship thing. And also, this doesn't trump portfolio work. This is still the king. Like, art speaks for everything. If you have the best network in history, I guess. I mean, has it happened? Actually, no. I don't know about you guys. I know a few artists who've done well for themselves off networking. Not necessarily portfolios, but it's rare, I find.
I think I've seen a few examples when looking at ArtStation. I've seen some like seniors and leads that have like they're huge studios, but their portfolio just like has almost nothing on it. You're like, well, like they
A lot
must
of
be
this
like
might be wrapped up in NDA though. Like they might
Mm.
they might be / probably are like really good at what they do.
not just
Maybe they
that, but
joined
they've
as
been in the
junior.
industry for like 10 years and
Yeah, maybe
like
they've started as junior and they've just worked their way up, but then
yeah,
all their stuff's either, there's people in the industry who everything they've ever worked on's been cancelled. Like
yeah,
that
yeah.
does
Yeah.
happen.
Yes.
So
That's, I suppose, the other thing as well is that, and this is really, and I think you guys probably agree with me on this one because it's hard for me to wrap my head around. Some people just don't care. Like, it's a job, and they don't care about being the best artist on our station. They don't even put their stuff on our station. Like, I don't care. I'll have a folder on my hard drive somewhere with some artwork, and if I ever reply, I'll just send them a Dropbox link, and they don't care.
That might be a priority because it's always the best people in the industry, in any industry, are the ones that like behind the scenes who are really working their asses off. Like it's a billion that someone is just a savant and can do everything kind of thing.
Mm.
I think, I mean, in our industry, we're so liquid in terms of how quality gets pushed every year. It's not like you can be an accountant and you can read up on a few things and then you're good to go. It's like you constantly have to work on your portfolio. Like in a studio, it's easier because like people have push you, but then obviously freelance, you have to do that yourself. But I feel like every artist kind of has that obligation to always have a personal project or something going on, or something that pushes you a little bit further, whether that's learning a new software or learning soft skills. But there's always going to have to be development from your side. Otherwise, you might for like 3 years don't do any personal work, and then because like I think there is some people that have been in the industry for so long that reputation just carries them. Like they don't even do any work anymore. Like it's just all reputation. Sure, that is still there, but the majority of people still have to, you have to work on that quality, because otherwise in 3 years you'll have to play catch up, and then you might have lost so many opportunities because of it. So
I think
yeah,
them
that's
guys.
one reason I'm getting into photogrammetry at the moment. I've started to build my kit over there. But
Jealous.
I especially with like the Unreal announcement and stuff, and obviously that's been talked to about to death. But I'm concerned that is going to become more common in the future, and I don't want to end up obsolete. So like I'm going to use this time of being in lockdown to learn some of those workflows, and maybe I doubt. I mean, I love making props, so I'm not going to replace what I do now with photogrammetry, but maybe there is ways I can speed up my workflow or supplement my workflow with scanned stuff, or build up my own material library. But yeah, I'm just very hyper conscious that like I don't want to be left behind because I just want to make high poly models all day.
Okay, this is a nice. You know what? You've wrap this up in a nice little bow. So Hannah's just alluded to stuff she's spending the time like looking into and wanting to develop in the future. You two, what are you guys looking at? Like, what are you looking to develop while you're in lockdown, or what are you looking to develop over the next year? What can we look to expect from you guys?
Dude, you go first.
Oh, wow.
Cop out.
Way to throw me under the bus here. I think.
You think?
No, I think it's exactly like Hannah say. Like maybe a few years ago, it was all like you can stay inside the industry, but workflows are changing rapidly. We see a lot more like photogrammetry being used. So being open to the fact that stuff that's outside of the games industry, like doing stuff by hand or like can actually play now a big role in the art that you make. So like something that I've been really getting into is a lot more like industrial design kind of stuff, getting more into like programs like, for instance, like I'm big into Fusion now, really love that stuff. And I feel that photogrammetry as well, that's also another thing that I'm working on the back end. It's not really a big thing that I'm working on, but I have a friend that has like a bunch of handguns. Those things are really expensive here, by the way. So I don't buy guns. Like it's not a good, like I love shooting guns, but it's not a good investment here. Like it's so expensive, but he has a lot. So you would go over and you would take photos of stuff and get it scanned in. And it obviously gives you a better representation of what things are, especially like if you're somebody like, sorry.
scale. That'd be really good for scale.
Yeah,
Like easier
I
to do than Oblivion.
that's always like the most daunting thing for me getting into things is like figuring scale out, especially if you're doing a weapon that's not that well known. Now you have to figure out what the scale is, and the best thing for that I found was like whatever caliber it is, you can figure out from the barrel, and then you can take it from there. So photogrammetry really makes it easy in that regard. And then getting tape on things like more organic details is really easy to get in because of photogrammetry. So I feel like in the industry, like being more open to the fact that you can use outside sources to supplement what you're doing. You don't have to do everything in a 3D program. You can maybe go and scan it. So I feel that's where my stuff is heading as well. I'm using more like stuff that's outside of the industry to supplement my work. So photogrammetry is obviously it's been big for a while now, but I mean people are just kind of catching up to it now. And like Fusion is obviously like CAD-like software has been used for a while, but it's like kind of becoming a norm. And I think that's kind of where it's going. Like I think we should be open to the fact that other mediums can be used for the industry that we're in. So that's kind of what I'm pushing for myself.
Okay. And I'm just on that Houdini train at the moment. I think another
So 2019.
what, Houdini.
Yeah, well, no, it's still probably. I kid.
I still think that if you know Houdini, you're a wizard. Like that can be a really complicated program, man. Like we used that stuff in VFX, and I was like, no. Like,
No.
I'm just
Something
like Richard, you take over, bro. I'm just gonna be doing some Maya, you know.
but just to be able to build giant worlds or just a level or speed up workflows in any way possible, I think that's hugely beneficial to streamlining things for the future.
Yeah, I'm starting to try and be more open to that because I come from a fine art background, so I'm obviously much more like artsy. But I really like Houdini. Just I don't know, it just doesn't interest me. But I know that I need to be interested in it.
I think if you try design, I think if you said you're mentioning, like start looking at designer. I think if you do designer and like, become more comfortable in it, I think you'll find Houdini a lot easier to learn. Like, cause I opened Houdini, I was like, no, fuck that shit, don't want that. Opened designer like 8 times, and I was like, nah, fuck that shit, don't want that. And then eventually got to designer. But now when I reopen Houdini, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to like draw correlations between the two. Like, okay, that's how they tackle that problem in designer. Oh, they do something similar.
Systems in general.
Yeah.
Like starting off in Blender, they had a node-based system for shaders, and then Unreal's there. Oh, node-based system for shaders, and then that helped me transition to Houdini. Not Houdini, to designer, and then that helped me transition to Houdini. So, yeah, I think it's just a really good working with things.
I think as well, like sometimes like people like using or being comfortable in the software that they've used for a while. But like something, because I don't like learning new, like learning Blender, man, it sucks. Like I like Blender, don't get me wrong, don't stone me. Like Blender is amazing, and I like I mean it does a lot of stuff really well, so I'm a big fan. I'm really definitely on that Blender train, but like learning a new software is always a daunting task. But at one point, at one point you have to get to a point where you just like, man, this program can do stuff so much easier, and you just get sick of struggling a lot. Like, I think that really, it's either you get into a program quick or a new workflow quick because everybody's moving there, and you'll be one of the first people, or at one point you'll just have to be or you have to adapt, otherwise you'll be left behind. But I think a lot of it also is like some people just get sick of struggling. Like some things can just do it better, and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna go through the pain, learn this, and then I'll be better off later on. So
every Max user ever. Every
Max
Max user ever.
Yeah, you got.
I'm rather not gonna say. I'm not gonna say anything. No. I still get known as the Max guy, so I'm not gonna. Nope.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna say stuff. No.
I like Max. I am fine in Max.
You like
but
making
yeah,
life hard.
I do like Max. It's just
I've switched to Ryzen for UVs now for precisely that reason. Like I just heard so many people talking about it, and I was like, Max is fine because I have a lot of plugins. But then I was like, oh, I'll give it a go. And yeah, I hated it at first. Like I just didn't know what I was clicking, and like UV unwrapping is not the best part of the process anyway.
No.
And I would like get halfway through unwrapping something. I was like, couldn't figure out how to unfold it. So I was like, oh. So then I'd move it back to max, and then I was doing what you were doing, Alex. I was like, no, I need to just not give up the first time it's uncomfortable, and just and I figured it out like after maybe 2 or 3 nights in it. But yeah, it's just you don't like being clumsy. I think, especially when you're like a senior or have been in the industry for a long time, you feel like you should be better than this.
I had to uninstall I can't have an out for myself, like, so I had to uninstall Max. On the third time I learned Blender, I was in the middle of the Safe House project, or like back into the Safe House project, and I was like, I want to learn Blender, and I tried like 3 times during our project to do it, and it failed because I kept just going like run into a problem and going, oh, I could have solved this in Max. I was taken to Max, so I was like, you know what, fuck this. I uninstalled Max and really strong-armed myself into it and burnt myself out, but I learned Blender. And I just had to do the same with Marvelous Design. So I did a material using Blender's simulation, and I was like, oh god, this isn't doing what I want, and Marvelous did it. I was like, fuck it, I'll just go into Marvelous, and I opened Marvelous and I was like, shit, okay, close it, uninstall, open Blender again, and I'll carry on in Blender.
Because it's the one you know, right?
Yeah, well, I have an out. It's like if I have an out, I'll take it.
Yeah,
like
better the devil you know than the one you don't.
Yeah, but what interesting thing you said, Hannah, about like you know, as seniors you feel like you should do it. It's funny because it's like it's almost that kind of it's a, and I'm not saying it directly is, but like it's an ego issue, isn't it? It's like I should be better.
It's an internal ego thing, 100%.
I'm not really sure, because the amount of resources out there for learning nowadays makes it so people can learn things so much faster purely because they have that ability. Like when I first started learning, there was a fraction as much out there for learning content, so people can be self-taught or be in university and pay for extra courses in their spare time.
But it's not the same.
Much faster now.
Yeah, you still gotta go through learning. Like you go from knowing the answer like that to having to Google the answer every 2 seconds, which is like, again, if it's in it, like I said, it's an ego thing. It's like, I know the answer, great, and I'm the expert in this. Oh shit, I need to learn this other thing. Yeah, and it's like, oh god, I don't know the answer. Google, and on the 50th time, you're like, okay, this is becoming to be a pain.
I'm saying it just has much more of an opportunity for people who aren't in the industry to learn so much quicker and enter the industry and do awesome work because they've had mentorships from people that are offering amazing mentorships, or they've bought a really amazing tutorial and they've just grasped it really well, and they enter and then they're making like mids, like going straight to mid-level, or making like mid-level work kind of look bad. They're just really putting their heart into it.
I think that's a case by case basis. So like, you can follow a tutorial and make something look really amazing, but if I turn around and say, okay, I need half this building done in 2 texture sets and it needs to be under this budget, if you don't have that pool of experience to take a brief and fulfill it, that's a whole different ballgame to following along a tutorial and just making something pretty.
So this is the best example for this I can find. It's the substance designer stuff with Daniel Tiger. Like, I followed his early ones with like make this jungle mud, make this ice, and it's like, I can't be proud of this. I'm just following some instructions for this designer node. And then he released a rock sculpting ones where he doesn't actually make anything. He just shows some techniques, and it's up to you to put the techniques together. And it's like, early on in my material career, it was like I was posting lots of materials made from tutorials, and there was always a caveat of, sorry.
Oh no, you just said that out loud, bro.
I've said this out loud many times. I posted, yeah. It was like early on. Is like, I'll buy the JRO stuff and I'll do them, and then I'll do the material. I'd follow the tutorial and then post it online. And when it came to do my own thing, so this happened with the jungle mud one. Like, I did my own jungle mud with roots and stuff, and it looked dog shit. And it's like,
is this the one that you did like a before and after, and you sent us?
Yes, yeah. They're all shotgun shells. Pain. But it's like that is the exact same thing. It's like, okay, now I've got to the copy and paste of just make something from a tutorial doesn't work in practice. Like, you have to actually learn.
You could, because I'm self-taught. I've seen all the tutorials out there when I was learning, so you can see a tutorial piece a mile away. There's a million radios out there and AKs, but to not school people out.
So maybe no one.
I was going to say, we're going to see lots of gas meters now. Thank you, Hannah.
I would advise people take what they learn from tutorials when starting off and use that knowledge to make something different Because if you just make something from a tutorial, it's just congratulations, you can follow step by step. It doesn't show you know the process.
Yeah,
I
I
think-
actually tried to tailor my tutorial to not really allow people to completely follow it by step, but in a way that it would be for their own benefit, if that makes sense. So I would
Yeah.
I tried to show techniques, and then me actually vert pushing and stuff, I would time lapse through, because I'm quite a strong believer in, don't just you backwards engineer all you want, but don't copy and paste, as you say.
I think there's both sides to a tutorial. I think a tutorial is a really good learning platform, especially because we all know once you get into something. I remember back in the day when guns were like a really big thing for me. Like it's like, oh, I have to make this gun and I don't know how. Like I just don't know how. And a tutorial does help with that because it shows how you can get into it. But then another thing is I found the best way that you learn is making mistakes. Like you try something like, okay, this doesn't work. Like this just workflow doesn't work. So I feel like tutorials can help you nudge into the right direction. But if you keep going on that trend, it can actually be like, it can put you far back, because then you don't learn to think for yourself. You just see what somebody else is doing. And after that, you don't figure things out. So I feel in my own learning experience, getting tutorials that are based on principles and not actually showing you exactly how to do it. Maybe focus on workflow, not like the actual process. You'll be good to go. Like it sucks a little bit more, but I mean, going forward, it will help a lot.
Well, I think you've that's about as good a spot as any to end on. You wrap that up pretty neatly, Duard. Guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on and talking. This has been a blast. I'm glad we've decided to do the webcam thing. It makes it a lot easier to have a conversation with you guys. This has been really fun. So thank you. I really, you guys are both, we're friends. We've known each other for a couple of years now. We're working from Decagon, so it's good to also hang out and just chat.
Since we didn't get to go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
My stuff's
Always
sat there.
next year.
It breaks my heart. I got a t-shirt. I've got Jay's over there actually. But yeah, guys, anyone who's listening, please remember to like, follow, subscribe, share, all the help the podcast can get, because the more they get shared, the more people to see this, they get to see the fantastic messages that Duard, Hannah, and Mike have to say. But guys, we're gonna wrap up. I'll catch you next week.